Jade and I don't really have like fights where they reach a magnitude that's
right.
Loud and vicious and things like that. And so when we work through it, Jade and I always, I wouldn't say like make up, but we're always like, hey, we're in each other's corner by the end of the disagreement or whatever.
Yeah.
And our kids get to see that. And
right.
if they don't get to see a model or an example of how to work through difficult times, then it's like a shutdown, right? Like their brain short circuits to either this is what my instinct is going to do, or this is what I've seen in the past. And I'm glad that Jade and I do it. I think we do a pretty good job of like figuring that out. And the kids kind of see like, okay, parents need to be in each other's corners, like even if they're having a disagreement.
Where we celebrate those who have overcome great adversity and examine the tools and techniques by which people create lives that feel like thriving. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, and today we have a really interesting episode. Two guests that I've had previously are returning together. So Chade Edward Myers was on episode number 6, if you want to go back and listen, and Jade Myers, his partner and spouse, was episode 10. And what's really fascinating to me is that you guys have each, I have the privilege of knowing you both personally, and you've each overcome and dealt with a lot of adversity and difficulty, both individually, but also in your lives together as a family. And you're doing some pretty cool things currently. So what I thought we might do is start by, I'm imagining you guys each listened to each other's episodes when you were on previously.
Yes.
And maybe start, from there, like what it was like to hear each other talk about some of the things you've been through, and then, we can sort of freeform it, wherever it goes, but then I'd definitely like to get into some of what life looks like now for you guys.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
No.
Yeah.
No. I gotta think about it.
Yeah, think about it. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Jade has always been very open with everybody and with me about like what she was going through. But when I was listening to the episode, it was nice listening to something that was just free form and open, where it wasn't like necessarily a dialogue, but more of like a monologue of Jade getting to tell her experience. Mm-hmm. And it was also very interesting to hear an uninterrupted version, in a sense where like Jade's always explaining to me what she needs and how she feels and this, that, and the other thing. So I'm part of the journey, but getting to hear the journey from beginning to end in the raw format where it's just her, like listening to a biography, right? Yeah. An autobiography in this case, right? And that it hit really hard to like see the journey like extracted from it and looking in. Yeah. And it was just, it's so raw, and it makes me so happy to know that we are where we are now. Mm-hmm. And I guess right now we look at each other and we're like really happy that we're like, I'm so happy we made it. I'm so happy we're where we ventured through it and we're stronger for what happened. So for me, that was it was good. It was good for me to hear it from that point of view, because it's a journey rather than like an exhaustion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When you're going through it, right. And you're just like, it's just one foot in front of the other and one foot in front of the other. And you have no idea where you're going to end up, but it's just about trying to find the next step. Right.
Yeah.
And you finally look back over your shoulder and you're like, holy cow, we've come a really long way.
Yeah. If I had to like think of any example, I remember the first time I climbed a 14er, I was like a teenager, and I was climbing Pikes Peak. Mm-hmm. And I remember I just moved from Arizona to Colorado, and I was like, what am I doing? this is horrible. Like I wanted to quit a bunch of times. And then when I got to the top, I remember I let it sink in with me. Like the best views are from the hardest trips.
Right.
So like Jade and I get to look back and just remember, like, I'm glad we like toughed through it.
Yeah.
And life just seems to get better, and the view from up here is great.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt in my mind that Jade and I will be old and together and in each other's arms. So like that's cool. That's cool to know that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You reminded me of, I just saw something on one of the socials today. I don't know, Jordan Peterson or somebody like that, and it said the thing you need to find most will be found where you least want to look.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that hits hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn
God damn it,
Really, seriously, nothing gets to be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, it was just an eye opener of what Chad was going through, because Chad, we didn't really, I was only worried about myself for so long, and so I don't want to cry already.
Yeah, it's okay. Just let it out.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just sucked to see like how much he went through, with all the stuff I was going through, and we just weren't. I don't know. We just weren't there for each other. But it's different now. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I feel like I got more out of my episode, like doing it with you and rewatching it over and over, because it helped me to, like, I was always like, I don't know, that was in November, so always was kind of like, oh, I don't know, everything. I was just kind of down on myself. Oh, I haven't gotten that far. And since like that episode, and then watching Chad's episode, and then it's just, we just talk so much more about stuff, and are more open about things, and realize that we weren't there for each other. We couldn't be. We were trying to survive ourselves, and but that's not where we're going to continue to go. Not that we weren't there ever for each other, but it was hard.
Well, it's funny to hear you describe it that way, because as somebody who knows you, I always was struck by how there for each other you seem to be.
Yeah.
That was always my perspective, was like, Chad just said it's nice to know that, like, we'll be old and together. And, from my perspective, watching you guys, I would be shocked if that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess. Yeah, we were always tight together, but I guess there was as much or more struggle in friction than there was like complementary delight. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now the tide has definitely turned, where we're much more flip-flop, where friction is handled much better.
Yeah.
And there's not nearly as much of it. And we know, like, when there's rough days, it's easy to remind ourselves, like, there's always going to be good days and there's always going to be bad days, where before it just seemed like the bad days were outnumbering the good days way too often and way too much. But I think I'm a big fan of the Stoics, and they always give like sailing metaphors, right?
Yeah.
And I think once you survive, the craziest storm ever, you don't really get worried about the next storms that are coming. So I mean, you're just like, we went through a storm that was so ridiculous and we made it through, that it doesn't really matter what's coming. So when we get hit with that like turmoil, we just know, we have the confidence, like, it's just a turmoil, it's a bump in the road, but the journey's still going. Where before it was like, I don't know how much more I can do. Yeah.
Right. Every new thing, it's like, this has to be the limit of my capacity.
Yeah.
And then something else gets added and you're like, well, I guess that wasn't the limit, but this has to be the limit of my capacity.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly true. But Jade and I are in it for the long haul now, for sure.
Yeah, you guys are stuck. Yeah. And I heard you say, Jade, like it seems like it's really easy to minimize our own accomplishments, you know.
Yeah.
You said you know, feel like you haven't gone that far, but then you look at that episode from November and like, holy cow.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like because a few of my friends watched it, and one of them, Lisa, she was just like, she's like, damn, Jane. She's like, I watched that whole episode, and she was like, you're really fucking hard on yourself, you know. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was like then realizing like, okay, you really have to. I'm like, I was stuck in my little bit of a pity party. You know what I mean? You're just
Right.
stuck in a spot where you're like, look, I don't know what I'm going to do from there. I don't know like what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And then I think like I've started, you know, some people started pulling me out of my shell more like, okay, let's go to this jujitsu function, which was like Danielle Russo. And then it was like all these things that Chad has been saying to me for years is stoic and things like that. To finally, I guess someone who came around, I understood more. I don't know. Like I started listening to Mel Robbins, and like she just was like that type of person that's just kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? That's how she approaches it. And you're like, yeah, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? She's not soft and gentle, and obviously some aspects, but I think just like learning more about myself and realizing more, you know, your happiness it's already there. You just have to find it yourself. You have to create it, and you know, lots of stuff like that. Changing your mind, setting, and
yeah. I remember listening or rewatching your episode, and you know, it was a strange thing for me because I was, you know, I really wanted you to, you know, as a friend, I wanted you to practice more self-compassion, you know, especially because, you know, self-compassion gets a bad rap because there's been all kinds of studies where, you know, they compare, you know, a lot of people feel like self-compassion is really soft and it's being too easy on yourself. And like, if you have too much self-compassion, you'll lose your edge, you know? And they've done all kinds of studies on people in competitive type circumstances. And they compare people who are very critical on themselves to people who are coached to practice self-compassion. And the people who practice self-compassion actually do better in subsequent trials. So like, for example, they did one where they gave some students at some really smart Ivy League school, you know, Brown University or something, Stanford, I don't know. They gave them an exam that they were designed to fail, right? Like an exam no one could pass. And it was like a vocabulary kind of thing. And one group, the assumption, so in research with human subjects, you're not allowed to coach people to be critical on themselves. It's like, right?
Oh yeah.
But the assumption was if you just left them alone and said nothing, they'd probably be critical on themselves.
Yeah. So, especially in Ivy League school.
Right. So with one group, they gave them no coaching at all. But with the other group, they coached them on self-compassion, right? On how to sort of talk to yourself about, listen, like this was a really tough exam and everybody fails something once in a while. And, you know, it can't possibly mean I'm dumb. Like I'm in this very competitive school and right. Like, and what they found was that the people, and then they let them retake the exam again in a month or something. And they found that the people who practice self-compassion studied way harder for the retake than the people who didn't. Because all that self-criticism was like punishment, right? And so they were motivated to avoid, whereas the people who practice self-compassion were motivated to get into it and do better the next time. But as I was thinking all this, I was becoming very aware of what a hypocrite I am, because I'm incredibly self-critical and terrible about that kind of thing. So yeah, you made me look in the mirror a little. Darn it.
Jade has made huge strides. There used to, like, I don't know if I talked about this too much in the last episode. Jade, like, if something used to slightly upset Jade, it was like a wrap for the rest of the day. Like, the whole family kind of had to be on eggshells, like, don't upset mom, like, let's all do the dishes for mom, like, let's all be on our best behavior, because she's like, it's done. The whole family, like, if I wanted to have fun with the family, that would be like a no-go, like, we either had to leave or be on our best behavior. And it could be something very small to kind of set that off. And now, every once in a while, like, if she gets heated or upset, I'm like, oh, I go back to like, but within minutes, she's like back to normal. Like, oh, we're doing the rest of it. Okay, cool. Like, and it's now it's the normal. Like, one, she doesn't get triggered to that intense, I don't know how to say, like, not meltdown, but
magnet.
Yeah, like the magnitude of it. Yeah. But she doesn't have those moments anymore. And when she does, it's much more manageable. And the thing is, like, she knows how to manage it herself. There's, when we were in Florida, I guess Jade was having a real bad night. I just made her get dressed and had us go for a walk and just talk her out of it and stuff. But besides that, you've been amazing. I mean, everybody has like moments where they get upset. Everybody has anxious moments or whatever. That's like just part of being a human. But you've managed it excellent compared to what you used to do. I think that's been like a huge relief, like, on a relationship. And then, like, with my issues being like off, like, it's like all this weight and depression was on the relationship, and then it's like both of us are like letting off the pressure, and it can breathe and drive.
It's, you guys are like the poster children for exactly what I wanted to accomplish with this podcast. It's true, because one of the things, so like, obviously, so I have a coaching practice, right? I help people with mindset coaching and lifestyle coaching. I do some financial coaching, even fitness coaching, and that's how I earn a living. But I wanted to have some really good, useful, accessible information available to people who maybe can't afford to work with a coach, right? I just wanted it to be free. And that's why I do my blog and why I do the podcast. And one of the things I really hoped to convey is one of my pet peeves is that I think people have an unrealistic idea of what it looks like to overcome adversity and to create a life of thriving, right? I think people feel like, they imagine somebody who maybe survived cancer or something, and then these people open up a not-for-profit that helps folks with cancer, and they're running 5Ks and marathons, and and like, those things are true. But what's also true is that those people still have really shitty days. There's days where, like, the memory of sitting in the hospital getting their chemotherapy and being sick for 2 days later comes back, and it makes them really sad, and they have a rough day or two, and and so the idea of overcoming and moving toward thriving isn't that you're never bothered or you never have a bad day again. In my eyes, it's that the bad days or the bad moments become shorter in duration, lower in intensity, and fewer in between, right? The longer stretches between them.
Right.
And then the last piece of that puzzle is that during those long stretches between them, we're filling our lives with what's meaningful and what's important. Right. But everybody still has the dips and the days that are just where they're overwhelmed, or their resilience is worn down, or and that's why I say you guys are like the poster children for it, because of course you're going to have bad days. Like that's human,
Right.
but the ability to have them be fewer and less intense and more manageable, and to be doing all this, incredible stuff professionally, athletically, which for you guys overlaps a little bit, and family wise with your kids is what, the whole point, right? That's the whole point of overcoming the adversity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would say our kids are thriving right now as well.
Yeah.
Like just being in a healthier environment, school wise and at home wise. And they're doing great. They're making big bounds and leaps. They're happy. We've got a good life set up for them right now. They're having fun. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And I mean, and of course, like, even when you're struggling, you do the best you can for your kids, but, and that's important, right? It helps them later, but when everybody's doing well, it changes the whole dynamic for them.
Oh yeah.
Like a different level of safety,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You get to worry less.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
And I think too, they're aware, like, because they know how I am. They know when I get upset. They know, like, oh shit, kids know that, right? But their moms, but you can tell now, like, when they can see, I don't know, makes them a little more compassionate human beings, because Novia will say stuff like, Mom, I can see that you're upset right now, and I'm sorry you're upset, but I would like to do this for you. And that's how she talks.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're like, okay. Or even Finny will do the same thing, or Finny's more of the spree spirit, like everything's wonderful. But Cassius, some take goes, Mommy, are you sad? I'm sorry. They notice things like that more. And I think for me too, I'm more aware of seeing that and accepting it rather than pushing it away when they do act like that towards you. Because before, if you're upset or heated, just go, nothing to do with you, go away. But in those moments, you see them now and you realize more like, okay, it's okay for your kids to see all these bad moments. Like we don't sugarcoat a lot of things. Maybe we should to some extent, but we don't, because the reality is this is our reality, how people are, how the world is, and things like that. And one of the biggest things too is some of this stuff, it's like in a place where people are mean, to be kind, don't be that person, be a kind person. And I think that's like the biggest thing. I don't know, I think I just went somewhere else.
But yeah, I would agree. I think it's a mistake to not allow your kids to see difficulties, and I'd be a little less inclined than you are. I think I know what you're talking about, but I wouldn't call them bad moments, right? I would call them more like moments we don't like, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Because if we search, we could probably still find value in those moments, right? We grow from them. And so I try to avoid sort of good and bad, but the thing with moments we don't like, moments where we're feeling kind of shitty or whatever, is like, if our kids are lucky enough to live long enough, they're going to experience those moments too. And what we get to do is we get to model for them what it looks like to sort through it.
Yeah.
I would agree 100%. And Jade and I actually have had that conversation a couple times. It's like Jade and I work through each problem, and I would say I don't let it escalate, right? Like we bring it like, okay, let's talk through this. This is an issue. Like, how are we going to fix it? And Jade and I don't really have like fights where they reach a magnitude that's loud and vicious and things like that. And so when we work through it, Jade and I always, I wouldn't say like make up, but we're always like, hey, we're in each other's corner by the end of the disagreement or whatever. And our kids get to see that. And if they don't get to see a model or an example of how to work through difficult times, then it's like a shutdown, right? Like their brain short circuits to either this is what my instinct is going to do, or this is what I've seen in the past. And I'm glad that Jade and I I think we do a pretty good job of like figuring that out, and the kids kind of see like, okay, parents need to be in each other's corners, like even if they're having a disagreement.
Right. And conflict for them will feel disastrous, right?
Yeah.
If they don't have a model for like conflict is okay, and we stay committed to each other, and we stay committed to ourselves individually too, right? So if we don't see eye to eye, we don't necessarily expect either ourselves or the other person to just give up their perspective or their values, or their just to be on the same page. But we're so committed to each other that we stay engaged. We engage until we find where the common ground is, I think it's really, I agree. I think it's really healthy to model that for children, so they don't feel like conflict in later relationships is, I don't know, a judgment on their character or
Right.
disastrous or anything of the sort, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right on board with that. I think you're right. I think it's really healthy for kids to see that when we're sad or overwhelmed or grieving, that like, we take appropriate time and place to value or attend to what we're feeling, but we also like don't cease to exist, right? We still, if possible, we still get up and we go to work. We still take care of things around the house. We still do the things we need to do, but we also don't just ignore what we're feeling, and right, some's demonstrating through our own behavior some balance of how to validate what we're going through and press on.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good conclusion.
Yeah. So why don't you guys talk a little bit? We're friends on all the socials and such, even though we don't see each other as much as I would like personally. But so I know some of what you guys are up to and what's going on in your lives, but why don't you update folks on what's going on with the school, because the school's doing exceptionally well.
Yeah,
it looks like, and with you personally and with your family life, and see where things are now.
You want to go?
Do you want to go first?
It's up to you.
You can.
Okay. So I opened up a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy that where before it was kind of like a small temporary thing, but it has exploded like exponentially. And we are about to move into our new location, which is 2,000 square feet of mat space, open. Wow. We designed the building for jiu-jitsu, so that was kind of exciting. But even now, we've broken the threshold of students. That's remarkable. I'm really excited about, to the point where I felt confident in quitting my day job. So yeah, I know, right? So that's pretty cool. So I had like a couple online endeavor like businesses that I do online that I started pursuing in that free time. But for the most part, I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaching, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, doing privates, and competing, traveling and competing.
Yeah, you've been doing a ton of competing.
Yeah. It's
doing really well.
makes a difference. So
yeah.
That's been really exciting because that's what I love to do. My friend and I kind of came up with a thing where we sat down and we're like, what can you do? Especially having been through what I've been through, what have I taken away from that? And how would I say to other people, like, how would you live a most fulfilled life? And then if we go back to Jordan Peterson, he even has a quote. I think it's like Rule 7. I'm really sorry if Jordan, if you ever watch this, if I misquoted that, but
he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Jordan, my biggest fan. No, it says like,
now he cares.
Just try getting as good as you can at one thing, like as good as you possibly can at one thing, and just see what happens. Yeah. And so I took that a little bit further for myself and said, I want to get as good as I possibly can at 3 things. Something for the mind, something for the body, and something for the soul, right? Because like, let's say the something that you really, really want to get good at is like only body based, right? Like working out, let's say, even though it has aspects that include the body and the or the mind and the soul, you might be starving yourself a little bit, or, you know, I mean, like it might not be getting as much as attention as you might like, you know, and things might get off balance in your like internal equilibrium. So my friend and I were saying, okay, like, let's do something where you are actively engaged in improving yourself as much as you can in all three of those aspects, right? Mind, body, and soul. And so for me, that's been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the body, which is nice because it has huge overlaps with the other two.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jiu-Jitsu fills all three.
Yeah. And then for the mind, I've been doing like, I got one of my degrees in in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I did not get my degree in applied linguistics.
Yeah.
And so I have like a big I don't know.
Love.
Yeah, love.
A love for language.
A love for language and learning language and culture and things like that. And so I have now pursued like learning new languages and finding methods to learn new languages. So like right now I'm learning Chinese. I'm having a ton of fun with it. Yeah.
Chinese is a tough language to learn when you're a native English speaker.
Yeah, it definitely has its ups and downs, but I love every second of it. It's something to challenge my mind and to like, you know, keep it like on its toes, you know, and to keep it searching. And what's nice about that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like there's a lot of uncomfort, there's a lot of discomfort, right? And so when you're trying to speak to somebody new, there's a lot of things that go in there with like evolutionary biology and with social construct and things like that of messing up a language, you know, like when you speak to someone new and they laugh at you or they speak English back to you and you're like, oh, it must have been that bad. You know, you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone to make mistakes, and to be an adult that's not speaking a language very well is very insecure. It's supposed to be insecure because you're supposed to be affiliated and assimilated to your culture perfectly. So trying to assimilate to another one in any aspect is very uncomfortable.
So quick sidebar on that. One of the best examples, my favorite examples, I should say, not best, but my favorite examples was a long time ago, maybe 20 something years ago, I was going on a date with a woman, and I love culture and things and different foods and different, I'm very culturally adventurous. I get very excited by it. And so there was a new, like, at least in the United States, right? Like sushi was sort of like becoming a new thing, right? Like and so I decided to take her out for sushi, and she was a pretty like typical white girl, you know? And so we sat down, we got seated at the table, and the waitress came over, you know, with her little geisha outfit, whatever, and poured us both tea and gave me a set of chopsticks and looked at her and said, "You want fork?" They just knew.
That's funny.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
To be culturally adventurous is extremely I think it can put you out of your comfort zone instantly. Something that you perceive as polite can be deemed as rude, or you know what I mean, and you're always learning, and you're getting reactions that you don't expect, you know what I mean, and it's very good to navigate that and just be comfortable, right? So in addition to that, I've been for my soul, I've been doing, you know, a lot of like stoicism and a lot of intentional, like putting myself through intentional discomfort. One of the big things I think for me would be the ice barrel.
So I love my ice bath. Yeah.
I hate it, but I mean, I love the overall results.
I love it. Yes. Yeah.
So I like used to almost like hit a point of resentment for living in Colorado. I hate going outside and the cold air hits my face. I'm like, why do I live in a place where my face is uncomfortable just by being in the environment? And I would go down the spiral of just like misery. And if I would wake up and it would be, you know, Colorado has that special way of the wind hitting you and just tearing apart your soul. You know what I mean? It's just that high altitude misery. So anyway,
if there are no semis for it to blow over, it just rips your soul apart.
Yeah, exactly right. It just right there. And I just like start complaining to myself, like, God, why is every weather in Colorado like horrible? Like if it rains, it's sideways, you know,
Yeah.
if it's sleet or hail, it's like a national
Right.
catastrophe.
It's killing animals at the zoo. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, every car is damaged, every
Yeah.
roof is damaged. If it's snowing, it's a blizzard with drifts that go over the fence. And so I'm just like bitching to myself. And then I had to hit that grit, you know, that stoic grit where it was like, well, okay, if this is the problem, how would I handle this? And a stoic might say, okay, become best friends with it, you know, or go into it more than you would normally do. So we started hanging out with these friends who had like their own cold plunge.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, God, I would watch how comfortable they would be. And I would be like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting our own. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to be good at this.
Yeah.
I will be good at this. And sure enough, I started doing 3 to 5 minutes every day, no matter what. You know, if I was in there and I was feeling horrible, I still had to make it to 3 minutes. And then if I felt like getting out because I felt that bad, then I forced myself
Another
to do
20
5
seconds.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I was 3 to 5 minutes, and every single day for the point. We've done that since what, like the 5th of January when we got it. So besides the day I was out of town, which I still took a cold shower, I've done every single day. And what right now it's what, April 19th?
Yeah.
Yeah. So however many days that is, I've done it every single day. And now the cold, I have not gone into one spiral about the cold.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, like the cold of Colorado has no longer bothers me. There's been times where like I saw the sun out, and so I just wore a t-shirt, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of nippy outside, and I look at the thermometer, it's like 18 degrees.
Yes.
But my body has like adapted
Yeah.
so well to the cold that it doesn't go through the short circuit of like, I hate this, I'm
Yes.
miserable.
Right.
And now I'm like, not, I feel like I'm broken a bond of misery that used to wear me down. I feel like a freedom, like a lift of pressure. I don't know how to explain it. And
Oh, I hear you. I started doing the cold water thing back in the 90s
heck yeah.
because when I was 12, so in the 80s, early 80s, I fell through ice once.
Oh,
Yeah. And I didn't even know that I was on, like, I still don't know if what I was standing on was like supposed to be, I was in I was cutting through a construction area where they were building apartments.
oh,
So I don't know if it was like going to be a man-made lake or if it was like they dug out a foundation for a new apartment, but I don't know what, but I was just walking and it was snowy and it was whatever and icy. And so everything was covered in ice, right?
right.
I didn't
Yeah.
know it was deep. I was just walking and then I was underwater and I tried to like swim. And I was in a big heavy coat and jeans and boots. And I tried to swim up and I came up in a different spot than where the hole was. And yeah, it was terrifying. So for most of my life, I had a real panic reaction to cold, like serious panic. Like,
yeah, except like obviously, like that's an acceptable reason.
Right. And so like, I mean, if I was like taking a shower and the hot water ran out, it would be like I'd have to forcibly catch my breath. Like and so in the 90s, I was working as a personal trainer in a gym. And one of the other trainers there, who's a buddy of mine, found this website with this guy who would take buckets of water out in like upstate New York in the snow and dump them over his head. And so my buddy came in one day and he's like, yeah, I tried it. And I was like, shit. Damn it. So I had to force myself to try it. And I panicked like crazy. And so I did, so sort of like you did, I forced myself to keep doing it every day until I didn't panic anymore. And somewhere in that transition, I ended up loving it. And
Right.
Yeah. I still do it. So I have you guys have the barrel. I bought a livestock tub.
Yeah, that's popular.
Yeah. You know, I'm sort of like livestock. So I use that.
So that's amazing. And that's like a true testament to it. So it's been amazing. Like the results from it have been amazing.
Yeah.
Getting in there every day has not been amazing.
No, right.
So, but I guess what I say, that's just like one quick, measurable, tangible, like aspect of what I've been doing for myself in the soul searching kind of thing, where I'm removing things little by little with grit by grit,
Right.
of like things that I'm scared of or things that I avoid,
Yes.
and turning it into my best friend.
Right.
So yeah, and that's so 3 things I focus on, right, would be like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then language. And of course there's other things outside of these things, but
Sure.
that's like, I'm not trying to be the best in the world. I'm trying to be the best that I can be.
Sure.
And where that matches up in the world is fine. You know what I mean? And like the competition is one of those things where it's like you're uncomfortable. You're like, why am I doing this? Competing sucks for 99% of the people out there.
Right.
And when you persevere through that and all that hard training and all, I've came out on the other side, it's not like about the medal. Like I always forget about the podium.
Right.
I'm always like, I did this, I made it, and it's showing improvement.
Yeah.
And that to me is more important than being the best in the world.
Right.
So I don't want to be necessarily the best, like, oh, Chade Myers is the greatest jujitsu someone ever, since blah, blah, blah. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to be, when I'm like on my deathbed, to be no excuses, not like I could have been great. It was like, no, I was great at this.
Yes.
And
Right.
like, I proved it to myself.
Yeah.
I was great. I did learn those languages I want to learn. There was no, I always hear, and this is kind of negative stigmatism. I hope I don't offend people, but I've heard a million times where people are like, I could have played college ball, but my shoulder, or I could have played, this, or I could have been a professional this, but my knee. And there's always like, there's a reason why it couldn't happen. And I wanted to push myself to the limit where there was no because.
Right.
Well,
and I gotta tell you, like, so I mean, you're reminding me, there's a famous quote, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, but I'm not positive. And he said, I hate writing, but I love having written,
Yeah,
right? Like that's the ice barrel, right? Like I hate doing it,
yeah.
but I'm always so glad when it's over.
Yeah.
But like here's the thing is like it's about living until you die, right? It's about living every day. So I have a different reaction to the person who says, I had this bum shoulder and I tried to play ball anyway, and I rehabbed and I played in the minors and I played in college and I tried out 7 times for the majors and I just couldn't seem to get to the point where I could, but I kept trying, I kept working at it, I kept going, versus the person who's like, kind of like the stereotypical, I also don't want to offend anybody, but the person who like hasn't done anything active in 15 years, right? And just kind of sits on the couch all day and is like, yeah, I could have been a pro ball player, but my shoulder, right? Like to me, there's a real difference. Like some of those physical, some of those limitations are real, but I have a lot of respect for the person who got as far as they could with those limitations anyway,
Right. There's the regret factor, right?
Right.
Like that person probably isn't saying like, I could have. Right. He was like, I went out and I did it. And that was like, and that's where I sat in the world, like in the competition level or in the, I don't even know what word that, like in the comparison level, like, he's like, that's where I got, you know what I mean? Like he put it all out there and he did everything.
Right. Compared to other people, here's where I landed.
Yeah.
And compared to myself, I was better each subsequent day than the day before it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And one of the big things that I know this is going to be weird, but John Danaher, right? And if you don't know who John Danaher is, he's the greatest jiu-jitsu coach, around right now. So
jiu-jitsu wizard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He has PhD in philosophy and somehow applied that to jiu-jitsu. And so, but he's been huge into other martial arts. But one of the big things is he got a crazy knee injury that prevents him from being the athlete that he wants to be. However, he like never stopped. He like continued to bury himself into the sport to the point where he has coached the best people literally in the world. Right.
For a while there, until recently, the most accomplished team on the planet was called the Danaher Death Squad, right?
Like exactly.
Yes.
He didn't let the injury stop him from that passion of what could have been. And he, like right now, Gordon Ryan, is the best no-gi grappler of all time, and John Danaher is his coach. And if if he would have stopped his passion at the injury because he couldn't compete in it himself the way he wanted to, if he would stop there, like who knows who would be the greatest of all time right now. You know what I mean? And that connection I think is beautiful. So I want to bury myself like that, with that sort of passion, regardless of what happens, into an aspect of those three things, and come out on the other side with no regrets and of what I put into it. So so opening up the jiu-jitsu gym and being allowed to bury myself in jiu-jitsu, creating my online program for language learning and learning new languages, applying my degree finally, which is nice, and then philosophy, you know, and improving myself, for my family, for my wife. That's been like what I've been doing since then. And compared to where I was a couple years ago, holy cow, like two different human beings, and a much more optimistic, durable, happy individual. And I mean, have you noticed the difference?
Yeah, I mean, you've always like been the happy person, you know, no matter what, but especially now. So, but I think like one of the biggest parts too is just like how he just loves teaching so much. He loves it so much, and I think it's really cool when you go somewhere. And for me, I get that social anxiety. He's like, well, just say this. I'm like, I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna say it wrong, you know, with the language. No, it's fine. Like, it's not fine. But he just says, he goes, I think they're Chinese. Let's find out. And then he just like says it. And then at first they're standoffish for like 5 seconds, you know, and then and then he says something else. It's always the women. Oh, he always said, and then I can't remember this one thing. Oh, you have Korean girlfriend? I have a girl for you.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
But the way that he makes people feel when he does talk to them, when he is speaking their language and he is like putting himself out there, I think that for some of those people, you could tell it's like, wow, you want to learn about me, you know, where I'm sure everybody has their own stigma, right, of what people are and stuff, you know, but for him, he's always like, he just keeps pushing. And we're in Florida, there is this restaurant, I can't remember what it's called.
That's like the sake bar, or the sake bar.
Yeah, but we went there like 4 days in a row because they were so nice, and we talked to them every time in Chinese or whatever language was spoken, and that was cool. And it was cool being in Florida too at the competition, because a lot of people speak Portuguese.
Sure.
And so then he just comes out there talking to him, you know, and I'm just like, I'm picking up a few words here and there, and I just smile. That's all I can do. Yeah. But it's cool because those people, they get so excited when you do know their language and you do want to put yourself out there and try. Obviously, some people are as nice about it. One guy at the whatever food truck didn't like you.
Oh yeah, yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Even now, like, he's like, you suck at speaking Spanish. I was like, you don't like us, that's okay. But I think just that how we like gets people excited about it. And then like with jiu-jitsu, you know, when Chad gets excited about anything he likes to teach, he's excited. I don't know how to make it bigger theme, but like when he teaches the kids or adults, or if they have questions, or if they feel like they're and when they always say stuff, oh, I'm not good at this, and we always say, well, everybody sucks at it, just so you know. Nobody's good at it, but they just keep coming, and they keep coming, they keep learning more. And then I think the biggest thing too, like seeing him, is building the confidence for people and just the words that he speaks to them. And it's not always about jiu-jitsu, you know, it's about other stuff too. And I think it how he is impacting lives, and that's like the biggest benefit of it.
Thank you. Like, to real quick to explain what Jade's talking about, when we were in Florida competing, it was like a language super melting pot, because we fell in love with this Japanese sake bar, and so then you go inside and everyone in there looked different, like the Asian people working there, and so you're like, what's going on here? Because usually like someone it's like a Korean family runs it, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like it's very, what's not the word homogenous, but yeah, it's like the same, right? It's
Mhm.
and so you find out what language they speak, and then you learn a little bit and things like that. But in this place, they had one person from like every country.
Yeah.
So like
Oh.
one guy was Thai, one lady was Korean,
Yeah.
one lady was Chinese, right? And then you know what I mean, everyone. So I was speaking Chinese with this one lady, and then another lady came around. So I made the false assumption that she was also Chinese.
Mhm.
And she was like, "What are you saying to me?" And I was like, what?
Are you
And
speaking
that's what she was
Cantonese
like,
or Mandarin?
oh, Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Yeah. And so this lady was kind of like, "What are you doing? Like, I don't understand what's going on." And she didn't speak English that well either. So she was probably like, "This is something weird."
Yeah.
And turns out she was Korean. So then I spoke a little Korean to her, and then she like opened up, started giving us free desserts, and she fell in love with Jade. But yeah, and so it was like, it went from like a standoff thing to like these tourists and
Yeah,
to like, "Hey, we love you, come back tomorrow."
Yeah.
And then
They said it to us. 4 days. See you tomorrow.
yeah, see you tomorrow.
I say, you won't see us after this. We're going home. Oh.
But and then it's Florida, right? And Florida has a lot of Spanish people.
Yes.
You know, Colombians, Cubans, obviously, and then of course Mexicans, and
Mhm.
you know, it's a very culturally rich place for the Latino community. And so we would be at food trucks, and everyone was speaking Spanish. It was like you were in a different part of Mexico, right? And between that, everybody who trains there is either Brazilian or Spanish.
Right.
So it's very interesting because when you go to train at the gyms there, they're going back and forth between speaking
and
broken
Spanish.
English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
Yeah.
Right. And then they know each other and where each other comes from. But for you, you're like, I don't know if you're like
Right.
Portuguese or what's going on. And so it was a big, beautiful like experience of speaking a bunch of languages. And I speak Spanish, I speak Portuguese pretty well. You know, I wouldn't say pretty well, but I can drive between knowing the Latin roots and understanding like the foundation of Portuguese. So I'll be speaking Portuguese, having conversations and switching to Spanish. And Jade was like, "What the hell is going on with all the language? I'm trying to keep up." And it was really cool. That just to give a background to what she was talking about. It was very much fun. And it's
you were in your wheelhouse, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It was just like jujitsu and language and stoicism was all in one. And I think that's what Jade was alluding to. And yeah, it was a cool experience, huh?
Yeah.
And we were, both of us were just like in our element. Just it was great. It was a good experience, right?
Yeah.
And there was no kids for the week. The kids were being watched by grandma and grandpa.
That helps. Yeah. That helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my children, and I love when I get breaks. So.
Yeah, it's and it's a hard thing to explain to people, I guess, without children or even people with children. It's like, of course you love your children, but it's always about the children. And then so when you get a break and you get to be like no distraction about each other again, I think that's a cool experience. Even
with adults, even with your partner or your spouse, I'm of the belief that it's really healthy to miss people once in a while.
Yeah.
You know,
Military gave that to us.
Appreciation for them, you know.
Yeah, no, because then you could just get stuck in the same routine over and over, and that person's always there, and then when they're not there, you're like, oh wait, that is a reality. People cannot be there, you know. I think that's a good thing. And
human beings tend to have a negativity bias. We pick up on the things that upset us more than we express gratitude for the things we like. And so when you're with the same person day in and day out, it can be very easy to get aggravated by all their little, traits or habits or whatever. But then as soon as they're gone, you realize, wow, I probably should have had more gratitude because there's a lot about that person that I miss, that was fulfilling my life. Yeah.
Yeah, because this morning Chad does this thing where he hands me stuff. He just hands me it and then sees, okay, is she gonna tell me to take it back, or is she gonna put it away, whatever it is. But he did that to me last night or something. He always does it. And then I picked it up, and then I was thinking to myself, we had watched some really good movie, and I said to myself, like, I'll miss this when it's gone. So embrace it while it's there.
Oh.
I have that with my, oh no, where'd you go?
Hold
On.
on.
Cameron. There you are.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I get that. It's funny. I get that with the kids too. And I don't, so my youngest, right, my 9-year-old, he's one of these kids who like tells stories like a toddler, right? Like he repeats himself and he goes off on tangents and he just goes, and I don't know. I suspect maybe I was thinking I might do a podcast episode about this or maybe a blog or something. I grew up, my dad made like no bones. There was no question about how he felt about children. Like my dad hated having kids. He was very, very clear about
morbid thing to laugh about.
I know.
Well, I mean, he was like, there's no room for interpretation. Like he would tell me all the time growing up, like, don't ever have kids. Don't have kids. Like, and so when my little one, like when I pick him up from school and he starts, like my very first reaction a lot of times, like, oh Jesus, like, oh my God. And what I've found is crazy is like, if I just say to myself, but I love this, like, I love it.
Yeah.
It's so cute. Like immediately my brain does a 180 and it's like, I can listen to him all day. And it makes me even a little sad that he's probably going to grow out of it at some point.
Right. Oh my God.
So, and it's a really weird phenomenon because for the first, 40 seconds or something, I'm like, oh my God, I want to jump out of the moving car. Like, I'm like, oh my God. And I have to like remind myself, I don't know if that was like a conditioned response that's why I say like, that's why I brought up my dad's reaction. I don't know if like I internalized that so that my first reaction is like, this is the worst. But as soon as I'm like, oh no, it's not, like, I love this.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm like, I can listen to him all day,
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're going to have those reactions to things that are supposed to be good. You know what I mean? And we have to have the tools to be able to correct that.
Yeah.
If we don't have the tools to correct that, that's when things go south, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What I kind of went on like this whole rant thing about, I wanted to get your take of what you initially think of like trying to be best at 3 things in those 3 different categories. And you can be as harshly critical as you want.
I have no criticism. It's funny because recently, so how, I don't know if you've had this, I'm sure you've had this experience where like you have obviously patterns in your life, right? Things that you like no matter what I try, I wind up here every goddamn time, right? Like, but every once in a while, the universe seems to like really focus you on the one pattern for some reason. Like it keeps throwing it in your face, right? Like until you have no choice but to be like, all right, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and really examine this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wrote a blog post about this, and I go to therapy once a week, and it's been like a main theme of therapy recently. And I was a guest on the Mentor podcast with John Roy. And this was a theme on that podcast too. I have a bad habit. So I'm happiest when my life is relatively uncomplicated. I'm kind of a minimalist. I'm minimalistic when it comes to material possessions. And I also like to be minimalistic with obligations, right? I like to be able to do a couple of things really well. And however, even though I'm happiest when life is like that, I've only ever had my life look that way for a couple of short spurts, right? And what I'm realizing is that every time my life gets sort of simplified and manageable, I have this tendency without realizing it at all, right? I'll just be like, somebody be like, hey, so I'm a member of Bikers Against Child Abuse of BACA, and they'll be like, hey, we need somebody to take over this responsibility, whatever, merchandise. Like, do you think you can handle that? And I'll be like, yeah, things are pretty slow right now. I can do that. Sure, no problem. And then somebody else from another area of my life will be like, oh, we need somebody to do X, Y, or Z. Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And what happens is like, eventually I get to this point where I'm like waking up every day and sprinting until bedtime, like just keeping plates spinning, right? Just spinning all day long and barely managing. And I start, missing appointments or being late for things, which I hate. And so this being really good at three things is so appealing to me, because right now I've gotten myself to one of those pinnacles again where like I'm completely overwhelmed with way too much going on in my life. And the things that are most important to me are getting put aside. And jujitsu is one of them. I mean, jujitsu is vital for my physical and emotional well-being. I'm a better human being. I'm a better dad. I'm a better partner when I'm training. And it's been, I started getting back, but I've been grossly inconsistent because I've just had so much stuff going on. So I'm a little jealous that I've had the discipline, to be able to be like, these three things are my focus, and still manage to like make a living and support your family and be productive, and right, like so yeah, I'm jealous of it, and not at all critical. I would like to, especially like I'm creeping up on 50 years old, like I don't want the rest of my life to be this story of like self-induced chaos,
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. And I really believe that like the most meaningful things we can do on planet Earth are develop ourselves and contribute to the lives of other people.
Yeah. That's a huge, yeah.
To me, everything else after that is like maybe a bonus, maybe nonsense, whatever, but like that's the core,
Yeah.
I keep saying to Jade, because I'm like, now I don't work, or like now this and that was easy and blah blah. And Jade goes, like, she has to stop me. She goes, no, you are working. Like, like she's like, that is work. You're like, when I put together the business and all this stuff, like it didn't feel like work at all. But it was a lot of work. Like it was a lot of things to do. It's a lot to manage, and
but there's the old saying, right? Like if you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life, right?
Right. And then what's on top of that, which is like motivating, is we've made already in the gym like a lot of positive influences on people. People who like big things, to the point where like we receive messages of positive impacts, and that drives me even further. Like the fact that we're bringing jujitsu to a community that didn't have it, and I guess why I get so passionate about it is what grappling did for me, what wrestling did for me as like one of the shortest kids in school, right? And with a lisp and getting picked on, what I became because of grappling and the confidence I built made me who I am today. We have brought this to a community that it's doing that for them now, and it's not work for me at all to continue to go through that, even though it's a lot of things to do. And being a positive influence where you go, rather than just like being a cog in the wheel making somebody else rich, or wherever it is. It's so like, it's like where I'm meant to be. I don't know how to explain that any other way. But
no, it's funny. Jade said a few minutes back, just a little while back, she said that like you were always the happy one, right? And my experience of you guys is so Jade, I know, went through tough time, especially when she was pregnant with Cassius, and that really difficult, and there like shortly after. And the way I would describe you, and I mean, you and I had some conversations where I think I got more insight than maybe people who didn't know you as well or whatever. But I would describe you, my perception is I would describe you as happy now. The way I would describe you back then is refusing to be unhappy. Right? Like you weren't like,
that's so
it's
true.
Right. It's a very different sort of gestalt from the way you are now. It was like,
Yeah.
right. It was like
You're
there was
good with your words.
unhappiness around you and you were refusing to accept it. And it was, as opposed to now where it feels very sort of flowing and easy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best way. That was, I would say exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly those words.
Yeah.
Jerry, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, what's that thing you wake up in the morning and you read your like zodiac like thing? It's like your zodiac describes you better than you can describe you. That's what Jerry just did.
So yeah. So yeah, I would, like I said, you know, back then maybe I would have described you as happy, you know, but like, you know, it's like knowing you now and knowing you then, I would say to me, you seem happy now. And back then you seemed like happy despite, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Happy regardless.
yeah. But yeah, so when you talk about these, having this focus on the things that are meaningful, I definitely, I absolutely see it. Like I see the value in it. And I'm a lot jealous of how far I am from it at the moment, you know? I find that right now I'm just in a place where like, I'm doing good things, like things are fine. Like I don't have a right to complain a whole lot, but I'm just, I'm getting up in the morning and I'm like crazy busy all day long. And like almost every day, like the podcast is an exception. I do this as a labor of love, you know, if I do get to the gym or to jujitsu, it's a bonus, but generally speaking, I'm busy every day and not doing my top three, like not busy with the three things that are important like that to me.
It's amazing what happens though when you cut those things off. Yeah. So like I worked a full-time job every day, right? Like 8 hours a day, so on and so forth. And what you don't realize is even though it's not your passion, your body is expending, you know, like more than 8 hours a day in that expense, right? And so like opportunities open up in that expense, you know, you get more trapped into that expense. And the second I quit my job and focused on the things I love, all of a sudden, all these opportunities came flying, like sponsorships and professional venues asking me to come. And you know what I mean? Like my social media, like I hate social media kind of, but I love it at the same time. But promoting yourself as an athlete, you know, through social media, like my follow started to go up, and I'm not like famous or anything, but just the positive direction. And I got to start working some IBJJF events, which is like not hard to do, but just all these things towards that effort started coming my way. It's like the energy towards that job. Finally, my brain was like, oh, no. This is where you're at. And the opportunities start gravitating towards that. It's almost like the universe knew. And I'm not even like a crazy, like hippie, the universe to get, but it's almost like the second you give your attraction to that thing, the attraction comes back to you. And it wasn't until I cut off all the things that weren't important to me in life did those things happen. And it's just remarkable that they were there in the first place.
It's like, you know, it's like to me, it seems like taking off an emotional weight vest that's been on for so long, you don't even feel the weight of it anymore until you take it off. Right. Like
it is like that. If sometimes my old boss will message me telling me what's going on and I like, oh my God. And that what he would talk to me about back then, it didn't bother me that much back then. But now I realize how much like, oh man, I would never want to go back in that office. Or you know what I mean? I would, it's crazy how much of a pull down and the exhaustion it is on you until you've escaped it. And what's sad is 90% of the people out there are all doing a job that they're not passionate about. A lot of people can find like, I don't know, happiness in the work that they do, but it's not like their passion, you know. And I've pushed really hard to make it so my passion is my work now, and that's holy shit, it's remarkable. And all those goddamn motivational speakers and who have made it, and they tell you all these things, like it's all true,
Right.
It's all true. Like, it's so frustrating because before they were just words, but now it was like, oh man, exactly what they said.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm really happy to be where I'm at. More so with Jade and the family. Like, that's where I'm extremely happy. And it's just like all these positive things. The way I provide for Jade is through jujitsu right now.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Right. Well, I remember sitting sitting on the wall at Prime with you, like waiting for our turn in like up, down, outs, talking about how great it would be to just be able to do that all day.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was 6 years ago.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think there's something that everybody can do in this life to provide, like you said, provide for somebody else and to be self-fulfilled. And provide for something else. It's like provide a service that makes somebody else's life better.
Yeah, just contribute to someone else in some way. Yeah.
And then at the same time, like, you're paying your bills.
Right.
And the phrase is really popular where it's like, we were twice as happy with half as much. And you get so worried about losing like things that aren't that important. Like Jade and I once were sharing a basement with all of our kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even though we had beds for everybody, we ended up all sleeping in the same bed half the time. And
It's still our life.
yeah, but I guess I'm saying is like, as long as I have the most important things, like, it's okay with losing a big house, or it's okay with losing a nice car. Like, you're always in fear of losing the things that don't matter, which is weird.
Yeah. On some level, I know it's funny because I struggle with that too, but on some level, it's like, if your foundation is strong enough, you can always rebuild on it.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's finally hit me so to the point where I'm living it, where it's like, I will never again sacrifice my internal self-worth to provide for things I don't need.
Right.
And so if Jade and I, for whatever reason, the business just like fails and Jade and I like lose this house, like, we're not going to die. We have family and friends that could help us in the worst moments. And at the same time, I will find something that I love to do every day to provide for the family. Like, I will not ever sacrifice that internal peace, and I will never put my family through that again. Yeah. So that's nice to be liberated that way. And I'm realizing that I talked way more than I should have. You should talk more. What are you doing with life now? Where are you since the last episode, Jade? I'm sorry.
Since the last episode, Jay's a blue belt.
Yeah.
I know. I think honestly, it's sticky right here.
Oh, your blue belt certification?
Oh, like my blue belt.
There you go. Nice.
It's sticking out. Yeah, I'm a blue belt.
Yeah, I'm a blue belt. Jade competed at Pans after just becoming a blue belt. And Jade's not like a competition style. She did it just because I do it.
Yeah.
I love you. But she killed it. She did really, really good. And so anyway,
that's sort of your pattern, Jade.
Yeah, I guess like a lot of things, I'm just working on my mental state. You know what I mean? Just all those different aspects of calming myself down. Like when he talks about things, and I would get hyper focused on, I was terrified of breaking my arm. It was happening for a little while after competition. Someone broke their arm in front of us and they're doing jujitsu. And then I signed up for Pans because I was kind of like, well, why not? Like, why not just do it? And then after signing up for, I'm like, oh shit, I'm a little terrified now, and I was uncomfortable and I got myself worked up. And then I think the last weekend of March, we went and did
Grappling Industries or Naga
or something in Denver. And I did it in gi because I was like, okay, I haven't competed in gi. I've only competed, I think, once in gi. And I was at Tap Out Cancer last year. I was like, okay, I should do at least one competition before I go to Pans, a few weeks later. And so I did it, but man, it's hard for me to describe it now because it's gone, but I had the worst panic attack afterwards. Like how I felt beforehand, I just felt so terrible and sick, was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I'm too old for this. I hate this.
Oh, Jade, if you're too old for this, I have no hope.
Mentally, you know. And so anyways, I went and I did it the past, you know, in March, and I was like, okay, I was like, all right, I did it. I can do it again. If I get too freaked out, it's okay. Don't do it, Jade. No big deal.
Yeah.
And so I came into there and we traveled with Sarah and how she is for her competition. She honestly like inspired me. He quite ground. But like, she's just like, what does it matter? What does it matter? It's not gonna matter 5 years from now, so it'll be over before you know it. Just go out there and do it. It doesn't matter.
If you want a pep talk from anyone before competition, it's Sarah.
Yeah.
She was so calm before I was like, I've been competing grappling since I was in middle school, and yet you are way better at this than me.
Yeah, she's got a great mindset.
Yeah, she does. And so you know, it was just like, okay, just be like Sarah, you know what I mean? Just like, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. You got this. And just talking to myself constantly, giving myself like, you're gonna do fine, you're gonna be great, it's okay. And I did it, and I was exhausted afterwards. Obviously the adrenaline dump afterwards, I was emotional that day because I think it was the buildup of going out there and doing it. But I did it, and you know, that's a lot. Not a lot of people can say they did that at age 35. So it's like, it's cool. I put myself out there. So
for sure.
And she did good. She did real good, flowed real well. And
yeah, but I guess the biggest part for me was just, I did it.
Yeah.
And
didn't have the panic attack.
And I gave myself the option though, like, you can always back out. It's okay if you back out. And I gave myself that option. But then as it came closer, it was like, you paid all that money, you're going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, just do it. It'll be fine. But yeah, so that's what I thought that was cool. But then,
yeah, it's a big progression step.
Yeah. Within just 2 weeks, you know, it's a big
I think
thing.
part of the key is that, and I think Sarah has this, I don't want to speak on her behalf, right? But my observation is that she's got this quality, and that is like the idea that like how you perform or whether you win or lose, like it's great to feel good about winning and to celebrate, and it's perfectly fine to be disappointed when you lose, but neither one has any impact whatsoever on your self-worth, right? I think when we get super anxious about it, myself included, you know, it's because we're tying it up in our like identity and our self-worth, and if we lose, what does it say about our, you know, our worth? And it's like, well, the thing is, if you don't lose once in a while, you're probably not competing against the right people anyway. So you know,
exactly,
absolutely.
And, I think that sense of calm comes from like understanding that her self-worth is in no way attached to the outcome of a particular match, you know?
Exactly. That's her. That's the energy she gives you, for sure. And so, but you know, without, obviously you might, maybe in different areas of our life we would have found different people, but like, look how many people we've met through jiu-jitsu. Just gosh, there's so many people, you know what I mean? Amazing people. And I think that's cool. Like we talked about earlier, the people that we're meeting, how you're impacting their lives in different ways, you know, because I was a teacher and I miss that. I miss the kids and getting them excited, you know. The environment wasn't the best environment for me to teach in, unfortunately, but I still miss that aspect. But then when you get it with the teenagers, you know, we all remember being teenagers in high school, you know what I mean? And to give those kids a confidence in themselves and just teach it to them young, you know what I mean? Just even if you're giving them 5 sentences, those 5 sentences can mean the world of a difference, or just giving them hugs, or just being excited when you see them. We don't know what everyone's lives are like at home, right? You have no idea. And I think doing that that's rewarding.
Are you talking about like going from like teaching in a classroom setting to teaching jujitsu now? Like you found that you have that like providing for them?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, okay,
so. Yeah. Because it's
You get to
doing,
contribute to a community.
yeah, exactly. And then you're learning more about people. I love learning about people and sitting down and talking to people, and you learn more about parents and their past, what they've done with their lives and what they've experienced. And I think it's nice to go through and listen to those things about people, because then you learn more about them. And then it kind of grounds you, even if you had well, I thought this about this person, it keeps pushing you back those steps to be like, just listen first. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of that stuff's really cool, or understanding, because with teaching, there's some little details that you always have to, this child like certain textures, or this child doesn't like when you look at them a certain way, like, but helping those kids to develop past those uncomfortable situations. And it's the same with jiu-jitsu, and it's the same in inspiring moms to do it. It's like you have no idea, there's this huge mom community out there, like we're all do it, we all have like 3+ kids, like you can do it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that's really cool to say that. So
yeah, I found it's amazing what you can learn when you replace judgment with curiosity.
Yes. Jerry, your fucking words.
Good that something's working. But yeah, like we're very quick to judge often and make assumptions, right? And
Yes.
and if we can just replace that with curiosity, right? And somebody acts a certain way, instead of passing judgment on their behavior, if we become curious about what motivates it or where they come from, you know.
Yeah.
The outcome
Exactly.
change,
Yeah, the outcome changes.
Are you writing that down?
I'm just sure, yeah.
Dave's writing it down.
Yeah, no. And then a lot of things too, like like what you're kind of talking about for changing your mindset. You know, a lot of that is taking more time for myself to prioritize, even if it's a little bit, reading little things. Like there's some of these things I find online, like I listen to Mel Robbins. There is this one guy that kind of started me, was named Joe Dispenza. And have you heard of him? He's the one who talks about, I just forgot what it was called, but talks about how your brain works and how rewiring. I think it's called Rewire, and talks about how you rewire your brain and how talking to yourself, and talks about, you know, all kinds of sciencey things I don't know the terms for.
Yeah, he's a little bit more on the physical aspect of like what's happening to you physically when you like brain frack and things like that, like building new neural pathways. So that way you're like understanding on a physical level, like, why is this so hard to get over that? You know, like, because your brain is literally sending signals of pain to like to avoid certain situations, or you know what I mean? Being a social outcast used to mean back in the day, like you had less of a chance of survival. So you'll be like socially accepted is like a physical biological evolution, right? Where it's you physically want to be accepted in the social aspect, and that social anxiety is actually like a physical thing that's happening in your brain. It's not just like, hey, get over it. And so I think he makes a good transition for like what psychologists say, like how to fix things, but what's happening physically, so you know, like, hey, this is a tangible thing that you are doing here. So sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, because I don't explain that stuff.
I would say everything psychological has a physiological explanation, right?
Absolutely.
It's everything boils down to electricity and chemicals and structures, right? Brain structures and you know, I mean, there's a chicken and the egg question, because obviously changes in neural activity or neural structure will change your presentation, change your behavior and your affect, but changes in self-talk, changes in affect, changes in behavior will also adjust the physiology, right? So
it has to, I explained this kind of to Jade too, like the there's these little things that go in between the neurotransmitters that are insulators, right?
Yeah.
And so it allows electricity to pass through them easier. And so the more
It's called
electricity
myelin.
that goes through them, the more insulation it goes on. And it's like
Right.
the positive feedback loop,
Talking
right?
about a myelin sheath.
I think so. Yeah,
Myelin
exactly.
sheath,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like
Mhm.
spit when I said that. Sorry. But yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you're literally building up the path of least resistance the more you encourage a behavior, right?
Yes.
And then so to try and encourage a new behavior when this is the path of least resistance,
Right.
you're like literally paving a new road in your brain where you have
Yeah.
to build now.
Yep.
And so it's very difficult to do that because
Yep.
physiologically it's not what your body wants to do. And to go against what your body wants to do is very difficult. And
Right.
that's where
Definitely.
the self-talk comes in, right? It's where it's like, it's okay, we're going this way. We're gonna
Mhm.
plow
Yep.
down this area
Yep.
and cut down the
Bite
trees
down on
to
the
pave the
mouthpiece
road.
and do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I always explain to Jade, like, I went through that stage and it's hard. It's
Yeah.
like physically hard. You
Yeah.
have to overcome it. And
Yeah.
I think Jade has gone through that stage now.
Mhm.
And well, I said it gets easier. The momentum gets easier because the electricity is becoming less resistant. You know, like
Yeah.
the conductor is getting the insulator, right? So it becomes easier over time. And then one day you'll look back and be like, why was it so hard? It's
Yeah.
because it was that hard at one.
Well, I always think of like tractor tire tracks in a field, right? When the tractor's gone the same route over and over,
Oh yeah.
there's like tracks in the field, right? Like, and it's created a path. And if you now have to go elsewhere in the field, the tractor ride is all bumpy and wonky, and right,
Yeah.
until you can dig in new tracks in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, exactly what you're saying, like going through that. Because after like we talked in November, certain things started coming into play, little things started being brought to my attention, there's little programs or people's podcasts or things like that. And then one of the things too was like I was having very bad anxiety. I was always terrified that someone was going to die, die in a dry, like very bad anxiety. Always something was going to happen. That's how I thought in my head. I'd watch some weird movie, which I stopped watching some of the scary stuff because I mentally couldn't handle it. It would just be a loop. And so then I was taking anxiety medicine, that was January. So I'm like, well, I'll just take it ahead of time because I'll make it go away, in my mind.
Yeah.
And then after reading more stuff, just going through different phases, I'm like, well, I need to be the one to do that. This is not fixing any of it. Yes, some of these medicine probably do help me with certain things, like the bipolar medication I take, but other stuff, it's like, I'm just numbing it. I'm just using it as, I don't know, numbing it, I guess I would say. But then, but then, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, so with few exceptions, most of the like SSRIs, like the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety meds, like the proper use for those really is to take the edge off enough that you can do the work to, adjust your perspective and your mindset, right? If you're so anxious or so depressed that you can't engage in like the therapy work, then the meds help dial it back enough that you can. But if you're taking meds and not doing the work, then you're actually just reinforcing the anxiety, right? Like the idea of taking it first, right? Why would you take it first? Well, because you're anxious that you're going to need it. And so, right. And so it's just reinforcing the anxiety until you can recognize like, okay, it's actually providing me an opportunity to roll up my sleeves and dig in if I want to.
Yeah. And then I think it was one day I was just kind of like, I'm not going to take this anymore. You know what I mean? Just, it's going to suck. It's going to be hard, but you can do it. Just figure it out. And then that's when I did the other way, But there was when I was upset in Florida one day and I was having the hard time. It was like I couldn't. You have to like tell yourself stop doing it. You're like you keep feeding it. You're feeding it, Jade. It's not like just stop feeding it. And then you're like, then you get stuck. Like I'm just gonna be mad because I'm mad and I can't stop. I was like, no, you can stop it. Stop feeding it and going through different things like that. Yeah. And there's times where I'll tell Chad like, I'm just gonna be quiet for a few days. just so you know, I'm just gonna be quiet for a few days, nothing to do with you, just working on some things, you know. And that's how I have to, like, when I would get upset about little stuff, I would have a comment to say. So then I had to like leave it, just keep it to myself, and then think about it. Okay, is this something really to be upset about? Okay, he does this, you know, like something that Chad does, like, well, he does this because that's how he's programmed. That's like what he does. And it's not like a bad thing. Like, I think of an example.
Handing you things.
Handing me things.
Yeah. That's where I was going too. Yeah.
It's just now, like, before it would piss me off so much. Like, you know, a few years ago, I'd be like, what the fuck are you always handing shit to me? Are you seeing?
Right. Right. And
But-
that's the crazy part, right? And this is like, if I had to whittle this all down to like one sentence, it would be this, right? Is like, you can always find what you're looking for. If you're looking for reasons to be pissed off or anxious or upset, you'll find them. If you're looking for reasons to be happy and grateful and joyful, you can find those too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, just doing that has really changed. And then finding focus in other ways. Like, you know, I think when the biggest thing for me too was coming back to, you know, I feel like I always want to share stuff, but then sometimes it's like, oh, I feel like he's too busy, so I don't want to share with him. And then it's like, no, you need to don't tell yourself that. Don't give that a reason. Like, no, first person you want to share it with your best friend, share it with that person.
Absolutely.
You know. And if you continue to do that, then that's who you're going to share those moments with. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jade and I had to have that conversation where I was like, hey, regardless of what I'm doing, it's like, you come first. Like, interrupt that if you have a need for me. Like,
and don't make the decision on my behalf, right?
Yeah.
If I really can't do it right this moment, I'll let you know. But you don't have to decide for me. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love you guys, and it's so great to see you doing well. And we really need to make a plan to get together and grab some dinner or something at some point.
Yeah. I'm not working anymore, so.
Yeah. Jade will say you are.
Yeah.
But
I have more free time now.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you give out your socials and where people can find you and can find the school? And,
not social security numbers.
No.
Social media.
No, social media.
Oh.
Yeah. Social media.
That's a
Where
funny
people can
joke.
like find the school and find, you know, reach out to you if they have questions or whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I would say the online business that we just started this Instagram. So if you guys want to go support it before we're like fully operational, it's called the Universal Learning Approach. And it's going to be a podcast of sorts, talking about those 3 different things. And it's going to follow that journey of my online business and things like that. But the places where I'm sponsored and things of that nature is I'm Ground Demon _BJJ for my jujitsu journey. And my business is CFS _jujitsu or underscore. Yeah, I should say that again. CFS _Jew_jitsu. So yeah, it's weird to say, right?
Oh.
Yeah. _jujitsu. But yeah, it's not JEW, JIU. For jujitsu.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's why I felt weird saying that. And then basically that's it, right? If you want to find our online, our website, it's cfsfalcon.com. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming back and circling back and letting everybody know how things are going. I think it was really cool to have you each sort of individually tell your stories and then come back together and kind of like show where you are now. It's a very cool dynamic. And of course, thank you to everyone who watches or listens to the podcast. I so incredibly appreciate your time investment and your feedback. And so this podcast, if you want to watch it, it's available on YouTube. The YouTube page is Growth and Thriving LLC. On Facebook, we have a couple of communities you can join, a couple of groups. One is Growth and Thriving After Trauma. One is Thriving Fathers Parenting After Trauma. And the third is Leadership Skills for Survivors. So feel free to join those groups on Facebook. I share the podcast through those. You can comment, communicate. I don't block anybody unless they're like spamming, right? Unless they're trying to sell things but as far as people communicating, it's intended to be an open forum. If you're interested at all in my blog, the blog is called What the Fuck Am I Doing? And, a lot of the same themes as the podcast. It's a lot of lessons and insights and awareness, but as illustrated through my own life and my decisions, and with a lot more humor and a lot more foul language. The website is www.whatthefkamidoing.com. So you can check out the blog there. And that said, I just thank everyone for their time. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, please give it a like, and by all means, please comment and share so that we can get as much exposure as possible. Check out CFS online, CFS Falcon, you said, right? .com?
Yeah, cfsfalcon.com.
Check out what they're doing over there. And until next time, this is Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak saying, keep growing until you're thriving.